And onto a big political issue dominating Canberra at the moment, which is 60-day dispensing reforms. The changes are due to come into effect from September 1st, and they are now under fresh scrutiny. Labor's plans to double the supply cap from the current limit of 30 days were revealed back in April. The extension will, in effect, halve the dispensing fee, slashing patient costs in the process. Now, the closure of a Queensland pharmacy over the weekend has the Pharmacy Guild renewing its warnings of the impact of what it's saying amounts to forced funding cuts. It's calling on senators to stop the changes going through. The Australian Medical Association, though, has labelled those concerns as an irresponsible scare campaign. Let's bring in now the president of the Pharmacy Guild of Australia, Trent Twomey. Trent, really appreciate your time. Thank you. Firstly, just let's pick up on that story I mentioned in the introduction there, the closure of the Queensland pharmacy. It sounds like this pharmacy, the Montville pharmacy, really suffered thanks to the fact that the local GP clinic shut down. So essentially they were getting no prescriptions from any local doctors. Is it a bit disingenuous to claim that that particular pharmacy had to close its doors thanks to laws that don't even come into effect for another month?
So, Ash, there are 342 pharmacies, 342 towns rather, right across Australia where there is a pharmacy but no GP. So pharmacies can survive, and thank goodness that they do, when a general practice is not nearby. But the difficult decision made only over the weekend by that pharmacy owner up in the Sunshine Coast hinterland in Montville was that, and she said, I can't have both of these cuts at the same time. I can't weather the closure of the local general practice and the pending cuts from the Albanese government on the 1st of September. So she made the difficult decision to hand back her lease and close that practice over the weekend. And, you know, this comes on the back of the Capital Chemist Pharmacy down in the ACT that had to lay off their practice nurse that runs their baby clinic, lay off a few of their pharmacists. So now when you go in, you're going to have to wait longer to be able to get your services. This comes on top of the Casuarina Amcal pharmacy up in Darwin, the original 1982 day-night pharmacy for the Northern Territory. It is no longer open nights. And then you see a pharmacy over in Western Australia who no longer trades on Sundays. So this isn't an isolated case. This isn't just in regional, rural and remote locations. And we're going to see many more pharmacies make those difficult decisions to either cease to exist or to cut back services that their patients are relying on.
So, Trent, explain the economics here for us for an individual pharmacy. When you break it down, where are we seeing most of the revenue lost? Is it on the actual dispensing fee, and how significant is that? Or is it more of a feared drop-off of foot traffic and incidental purchases that go with that if people don't have a reason to visit the pharmacies regularly?
Now, every pharmacist in Australia wants cheaper medicines. Any initiative that is going to save Australians time and money, every pharmacist in Australia is going to be supportive of. But what we've got here is a policy that says, you know what, you can have a second box for free and the pharmacist can pay for it. Now, isn't that a wonderful thing? But you don't see addressing cost of living by increasing bulk billing rates by telling the GP he's got to get paid less. You don't see cheaper childcare being funded by cuts to childcare centres, and you certainly don't see free TAFE being funded by cuts to TAFE. But here we are seeing an initiative that goes before the Senate this period, so either this week or next week. And what we're asking the Senate is to do exactly what they're meant to do. They are the House of Review. What we're saying is, tell the government they need to go back to the drawing board. Press the pause button on this initiative, right? Don't can it all together. Press a pause button on this initiative and tell the Albanese government they need to sit down with local pharmacists and design a system which is going to give both cheaper medicines as well as making sure pharmacies are viable. And it is absolutely possible to do both.
But Trent, how significant is the foot traffic issue in terms of people not swinging by to just pick up a bottle of shampoo or some Band-Aids or a first aid kit while they're in the pharmacy? How significant is that?
Oh, and that's something a lot of our, a lot of commentators are commenting on, but that's not what we're talking about. Just the loss in dispensing revenue is $4.5 billion. $4.5 billion over the forward of the budget. And the government has said, here's $148 million to try and keep people to keep their doors open, right? So the government has admitted by their own package they announced last week that they've got this wrong. that they didn't do the modelling, that they didn't do the consultation. They wouldn't have announced $148 million for regional pharmacies last Friday if they hadn't got it wrong. So what we're saying is we need viable pharmacies, we need cheaper medicines. We're asking the Senate, the opposition and the crossbench to do exactly what our forefathers designed the Senate to be the house of review, tell the government this needs to go back for a review and bring it back when they've answered all of these unintended questions. So we don't have more Montvilles, more Casuarina day nights, we don't have more Mundarings in Western Australia, we don't have more capital chemists in the ACT shutting as that September deadline approaches.
Oh yeah, the government's arguing that, excuse me, every single dollar saved will go back into pharmacy services. You mentioned that you've been essentially lobbying senators to try to get them on side over this. How much success have you had? Who have you got on side? Have you managed to convince enough of them that this is a bad idea to actually cause problems for the government on this front?
Well, we wouldn't be having the conversations with good people like you today about this issue, and the government wouldn't have been panicking and trying to, stick this up with sticky tape and twine last week when they announced their rescue package if they were confident that they had the numbers in the Senate, or we were confident that they had the numbers in the Senate. We have seen the opposition, we have seen the crossbench do exactly what they're supposed to do and reserve making a decision, right, until all of the information, and they put a lot of questions on notice in Senate estimates just before the winter recess. And I've been speaking with most of the opposition and the crossbench, as have community pharmacies right around Australia, and not enough information has been provided by the government to give them an ironclad guarantee that these 4 pharmacies that have either shut or scaled back their services aren't going to turn into 400 pharmacies as we come to September. So, my door is open, Ash. I want to sit down with the Albanese government to come up with a solution that doesn't see patients missing out, that sees patients access both cheaper medicines at a time of their choosing, so at nights, on weekends, when the pharmacy is the only thing, more often than not, that is open, when the GP is closed, if they're there at all, or you don't have to wait 4 hours at an emergency department. But you know what? This government has a lot of balls in the air. They've got an aggressive agenda on multiple fronts, especially in the health portfolio. And with all these balls in the air and all the reform agendas that are happening on multiple fronts, they've just dropped the ball on this one. And we're standing here saying, listen, we don't want to be a roadblock, but you need to go back to the drawing board and make sure that there aren't unintended consequences with this one.
Trent, Twomey, thank you. We're going to be watching closely to see where some of those senators land when they make their final decision. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much.